So Trip Morgan and the No Dam's Given podcast. Little housekeeping note. So if you're watching the podcast and you're enjoying it, please subscribe. That helps us hit the Google algorithm and gets us more views. So it really helps. The other thing I would say is that if there's a topic that you would like to hear, then please comment. Both topics, criticism, good and bad, is welcomed. Today's podcast is brought to us by Albany Area Hand Therapy. Now, the hand therapist is actually not here today. He is on his way to Savannah getting some continuing education, so wish him well and safe travels. And also a shout out to my son, Joe Morgan, who is on the mound right now in South Carolina playing baseball. So wish him the best. So, Kerri, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a different look for me now. You know, I'm used to being on TV with no headphones, and still there's a microphone in my face, so it's a little similar.
So I wanted to do this with Kerri for a while. Number one, we're buddies, and number two, she likes beer.
True, I do like beer.
She's been a huge supporter of Pretoria Fields Brewery, as well as being a supporter of the Georgia Center Med Spa, for which we have Nikki with us.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Kerri's been awesome over the years.
And no one at this table is a stranger, that's for sure.
No.
Say hey, Nikki.
Hi, I'm Nikki.
That's awesome. So, as most of you know, or you may not know, Kerri is the weather girl. Weather lady, weather woman. What's the I don't know. Whatever. Weather person.
You know, I listen to Hey You or respond to Hey You.
Exactly.
So technically, I'm a meteorologist, but I also have the title news manager at Fox 31. So, but weather's my passion, and weather's always been my passion. So, weather girl, weather lady, Hey You,
weather person, meteorologist.
I think I've seen you before. What's your name? Whatever.
Right. So how do you get into this? And did you get scared by a storm? You know, lightning was really loud one night. What drew you to this? Or
every meteorologist has their own story of how it all began. Really, most of it involves severe weather or overcoming a fear, and that's why you choose to be a meteorologist. Me, a little backstory: I'm from Boston, Massachusetts originally, so it's up the East Coast a good ways. Over yonder, I think, is a term used down here. I've been here 8 years now, so I graduated high school in North Georgia. So when I was 7, I was living in North Georgia, Paulding County, and I saw a tornado form outside of my house. And from that moment, I knew that I wanted to do something related to weather. The movie Twister came out not too long after that, and then I wanted to be Helen Hunt. But I knew that I couldn't pull off being a blonde, so I was determined to make it work somehow. So it's always just been fascinating. I grew up watching Glenn Burns, like, chin in my palms, learning all the lingo, and just fascinated. It's the one thing in life that I have no control over. I can just tell you what I think is going to happen, and I've worked really hard to be consistent and right, because I hear all the time, oh, you get paid to be wrong. Well, trust me, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm going to be right more than I'm wrong. But there are times that, you know, Mother Nature will throw us curveballs, and you just got to be able to catch the pass as it's coming.
That's got to be something you hear every day. Kerri, you said it wasn't going to rain.
Right. Well, how come
I've scheduled something because you said it wasn't going to rain.
Right. Yeah. So that's my life every day.
Every day. No, I said there was a 40% chance.
Well, I don't even say the 40% anymore. There's always a chance. If you ask me if it's going to rain, there's a chance it may rain. I mean, it works. You're in July right now, and it's Southwest Georgia. So if there's a day without a chance of rain, then we need to mark that one on the calendar, really. But yeah, you know, it's hard work. Actually, 2 weeks before I got this job 8 years ago, I was ready to join the Air Force Reserves and fly into hurricanes. That was my passion.
Wow.
So I still have the opportunities to fly into hurricanes. Unfortunately, every time I'm set to go and join the reserves, the Air Force Reserve, the 53rd Reconnaissance Group, you know, I have to be here to help bring weather to Southwest Georgia. So the timing is a little bit of a conflict, but it's still, you know, one of my dreams to fly with them one day. So I settled for the rodeo weather landscape in Southwest Georgia, and, you know, I don't have to tell anybody watching or listening we've been through a roller coaster of storms just over the last 3 to 5 years, and even the ones before that. So it's challenging. I love my job because I go to work and every day is different, even if there's a chance of rain.
So I have a controversial thing to talk about. So do you think that so it really seems to me in the last at least 10 years that we've had more severe storms, and maybe it's just because we got knocked with a couple of years of tornadoes, and now we've had the big hurricane. Do y'all keep up with data as to whether we're seeing increases in large storms over, say, long periods of time? Is that something that's happening? And can I relate that back to some sort of global climate change, or is...
Yeah, global climate change is always something that's talked about. I don't know if you're using too much hairspray and that's making it, the reason why we have stronger storms. Right. I don't have the data for that correlation.
I don't have hair.
Oh, well,
but
you're not using
and
hairspray.
I stopped using hairspray years ago.
Yeah.
Swore it
I
off.
don't use hairspray
1984.
Either, all right, so hairspray's a moot point. We'll leave it to Ricky Lake and the musical.
Those are the 80s, man.
Right. Well, all you folks in the 80s using the hairspray.
Yes.
I don't know if that's contributed to stronger storms, but it definitely, in my opinion, feels like we're seeing more frequency of the number of storms that we have. It's interesting. We average for the state of Georgia 20 tornadoes a year. And, that one weekend in January, we saw over 50 across the state in one weekend. So there's 4 ingredients that make severe weather: heat, moisture, wind, and instability, which is kind of like just a change. It's kind of like chaos in the atmosphere. When those 4 ingredients come together, we have severe weather. We have the Gulf of Mexico, who influences our weather with the sea breeze front. It brings the moisture you need. We're in South Georgia. It's hot. You've got that part of that as well. We also get the sea breeze from the Savannah coastline through the Atlantic. So we are in a position where we can see a lot of storms. It just, when those ingredients come together, that's what makes the perfect storm, or a thunderstorm, or a storm period. So I don't know. Weather's measured on a 30-year scale for the climate for an individual place. It's funny because we use social media and technology so much in our business and in our everyday lives that I'll be on Facebook, and my time hop shows me that we had the same type of tropical system that was impacting us at the same time 2 years ago. So I think we are focused more on it now because of how much damage we've seen over the last couple of years, but I don't know that it's necessarily stronger or necessarily more frequent. It just seems like now we have them all the time, and because of the PTSD people face in this community because of these terrible storms we've seen, a raindrop is scary for some. Oh, yeah. The crack of thunder is scary for some, because they've lost so much, everything that they've worked hard for.
Well, you're talking about weather patterns and looking at, so the river keepers, the Flint River keepers, we had a hydrologist show us some data. And if you look at over the last, it was 100 years worth of data, the rainfall and droughts really haven't changed, and they're almost reciprocal, and they're very regular.
Yeah.
Meaning you can look like we're in a deep increase in in precipitation, however you want to say it right now. But almost assuredly in the next 2 years, that's going to decrease. And then we'll have about 3 to 5 years of drought. Yep. And it's gone on forever. So it's so interesting, that particular part of it. And so I sort of agree with you, or I definitely agree with you that it's like the recognition and knowing that the storm's coming. Because when I was a kid, you just saw some clouds out there.
Right.
Mom said, "Come on inside. It looks like it's going to rain." And then it was either bad or good.
Right.
And so you really didn't have time to go for the anticipation of the shock of whatever was going on.
Well, as a kid, you're just upset you can't play outside anymore. But, even with society, we've changed. There's not a lot of kids playing outside anymore. They're playing video games, or they're playing games, or on their phones, or on computers. And that's part of what I miss about now compared to back then, because I was the same way. I would be the one sitting out in the field or on the driveway looking up at the clouds and trying to figure out what shapes they looked like, Right. But a lot of people don't really do that anymore. And even when I bring it up in school visits that I go to, they're like, "Oh," and I'm like, "You're not going to go home and do it. It's fine." but if you want to, that's a cumulus cloud, in case you're wondering.
I'm sure you get asked this a lot. So if somebody wants to go into meteorology, what's the best course for that?
It's actually a lot harder than most people think. What I do in my day-to-day is not what I did in college. And I say that because in college and preparing before you go to college, you have to learn the fundamentals, math, reading, writing, public
Science,
speaking,
right.
science in general. But when you get into college, it's all Greek. And I say that because it's all equations. And the purpose of that is so that you understand the atmosphere in a mathematical sense to help you with knowing what's in place in front of you and figuring out what could happen, tomorrow, the next 12 hours, a week from now. So it's a lot of science. It's a lot of math. And if that's not a strong suit, you can still do it, but you're going to have to work a little bit harder. Something else that just blows my mind, and I don't think I really paid attention to it until I became a meteorologist on TV, is I could go out right now in Albany or in Sylvester or in Douglas or somewhere in South Georgia, anywhere really, and ask what county they live in, and most people don't know. And so that's something that I learned actually after the January tornadoes, because unless you have representation and that's what's common where you live, if I were to say that there's a storm, a strong storm or a tornadic storm moving through Baker, Mitchell, and Calhoun County, people in Dougherty County still aren't paying attention until they hear Dougherty County. Oh, wow. So if you're in Ben Hill County, you should know that Irwin County, Turner County, Wilcox County, those are all nearby that could have a storm moving towards you. So a lot of people focus on the city that they live in or their area code or their zip code, and maybe not in so much Dougherty County because I feel like a lot of people come to Albany for things that they need in the more rural counties. But Cook County, do you know that you have Lowndes and Lanier nearby? Do you know that you have Berrien right next door? Tift County is right above you. Worth County touches you. Colquitt County touches you. So that's something that I've had to change the way that I present the weather. Is this is where the storm is. You need to know your surrounding county so that you have more time to prepare, because now, like I said, majority of the people are scared of a thunderstorm. So.
Oh yeah. Speaking of change and getting into the subject that I wanted to talk about next was. So media itself has changed. So how has that? Well, for instance, when the storms happened the last time, the TVs were out, but everybody was still checking their cell phones and still checking Facebook and seeing what Kerri was doing.
Yeah, it's amazing. 2019. You think about it. And I think a lot of us take for granted the power of the cell phone, the power of things like this, a podcast or the radio stations. There's a lot more leverage with these type of entities compared to TV. TV in itself in the next 5 years is going to be completely different from TV you've experienced your whole life.
Right.
I've been here 8 years. I moved to Albany 8 years the end of July. August 4th is my 8-year anniversary at Fox 31. When I moved here, we were still on tape instead of an SD card. We had people rolling tape to get the news on
right.
TV at night. And now everything's done by the computer, a small SD card and cameras, and now we do it from our cell phone. There are times that we may be driving and encounter an accident, or our batteries have died in our cameras. We'll just whip out our cell phone and go Facebook Live at these events, and we can use that video in the newscast later that night. So the way that we see TV, like I said, in 5 years, I think it'll be completely different. I think local news is going to be different in 5 years. I think we'll be seeing more digital updates. Even though we have a newscast at 10 o'clock, you've already heard about the news because you've seen it on Facebook. That was an hour ago, 30 minutes ago.
And that's the crazy thing is we never watch TV. But I keep up with you through all of everything
Twitter
else.
And Instagram. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And so I know what's going on. So it's not like that's not happening. And this whole idea, and you already spoke about it, this whole idea of new media and how the new media is changing how we're consuming it. It was a huge deal, and I think in the last political election. Yeah. I mean, all of the people who were the usual big players, they didn't even have any idea that Trump was going to get elected. Right. I mean, they had no idea. Right. Like, they're so out of it. And I think it's a full example of how this paradigm shift is taking place. It's sort of, like most things, it happens, and then it sort of sneaks up on everybody until the realization of that things are different.
Right. Well, and even with our viewership, we still have to rely on the old school TV and the broadcast and the newscast each night, because that's our job. That's what we do. But also, we understand that there's people in an age group that is 70 plus that may not have a smartphone. They may still be on the flip phone days and don't know how to access this information on a computer or on a cell phone. I have a lady that I'm good friends with, and she's a viewer and watches me religiously and updates me on things that she sees around the neighborhood. But she's like, "Oh, I didn't get that picture you just sent because I'm on my flip phone." And I'm like, "It's 2019. You still got a flip phone. You're the coolest person I know right now, actually."
You should meet my dad. He also has one.
Right. I wish I could go back to a flip phone. But you can literally find out whatever you want about me, right, just in the palm of your hands, and that's scary too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a good change. I think that, like you said, the change is crazy when it happens, and it's shocking to everybody, but then it becomes a consistency and an everyday part of life, and we don't really notice it.
Yeah, just for example, I actually called the TV station manager to come do a podcast with me, which seems like completely ass backwards, right?
Yeah, a little bit, but I mean, it's a good platform. We were talking a little bit before we started rolling, and podcasts are only something you think about while you're driving to on a long distance or taking a trip, and it was kind of talk radio essentially. But now podcasts have so many more elements to it. For example, the one that we discussed was Tara Grinstead. People who are from South Georgia know who Tara Grinstead is and was. And for those of you who may not know, she was a beauty queen and an Irwin County school teacher who was kidnapped and killed. And 5 years ago, podcasts weren't talked about. People didn't know what they were. People weren't doing them. But that one came out and sparked a lot of conversation and helped eventually uncover some leads that helped arrest 2 people responsible for her death. And they can be used in every single context of life. They have a lot. YouTube has a big pull too with the. I don't know how to do this. Show me how to do. Somebody else done it and has recorded it.
Right.
So now I know how to do it in 10 easy steps.
Oh,
or
no
30
doubt. I mean, my kids
clip.
don't understand that before Google and YouTube that you had to look something up, or there was a knowledge deficit that you had to go find somebody who knew how to do something.
Drive. I mean, even think of driving before GPS.
Oh gosh.
People wrote down. I remember sitting when I first moved here to write down how I was going to drive to get from Boston to here, because I had no idea where I was going. I was like, well, if I run into a situation where there's no service, what am I going to do?
The old Rand McNally naps that go, the huge atlas that goes.
The Twister reference. Don't fold the maps. Yeah, roll them.
Don't fold. Awesome.
But yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I think everything that we do day to day has changed a year ago, 2 years ago. So
I mean,
it's exciting.
I guess one question in my mind is, are the traditional media outlets going to adapt?
We already have. Now we are seeing more Facebook Lives from breaking news, where before you'd have to wait till 4, 5, 12:30, 6, 7, 10, 11, or the morning show to see it. They use live trucks to get that information out there, as quick as we could. For my shop, we push web first because we know people are going to the web to get the information if they haven't gotten it already. At the same time, social media, it's changed the way for that law enforcement does their job too, because everybody has a cell phone that has some video capability. So they are recording everything.
Right.
And so, you see more surveillance cameras being used at business locations because it's a way to document what's going on so you don't have to be there every second of every day. Just the access to that, and you can control your cameras from your cell phone sitting on your couch. So it's completely changed. Like I said, we've added social media live breaking news events. We do Facebook Live cut-ins for weather and big weather events that are happening before, during, and after, because your signal may go out. You may have the bunny ears, they're not working. You may have, cable, that's not working. Sometimes the satellite dishes aren't working. So how are you going to get that information, and how are we going to get you that information? So now we're thinking outside of the box, and we're constantly thinking outside of the box. What do we do when this fails? in the land of technology, what else matters? People will sit up, plug their car charger into their phone, and keep that car cranked all night long just to get the latest update on severe thunderstorm warning. Is there a tornado coming to my house?
Right.
Where is Hurricane Michael?
Sure.
That kind of thing. They are talking about somebody who just robbed a place. Where is that person? Where are they going?
Yeah.
So it's a way to keep in contact with loved ones too. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to see where we may be 5 years from now. This may be completely different too.
Well, just to be the naysayer, and you're in the industry, but one of the things that I've read a lot is that, just look at traditional print media. I mean, we've got all of they don't seem to get it, or it could be. And one of my theories is that they have so much structure. So they have large. I mean, just for instance, look at the Albany Herald.
Mm-hmm.
They have a huge building. In fact, they owned most of downtown, at least 5 buildings, almost the entire block at one time, which they had filled with printing presses from one end to the other, and they had staff reporters on 3 floors in the building. And so now they're in probably half of one floor, and they've sold all of the buildings that they had. And so there's a ton of just structure that all of these things had that probably needs to go away, because number one, it's not necessary in today's. You don't need printing presses, which means you don't need space, and all of your people can work at home because they've got typewriters and computers and everything there.
Tape recorders, they go out and they're where we are, just without a camera.
But still, even with that, a lot of these big media sources are going under. Or not media, paper specifically is the ones you hear about most often. But then there's for those of us who keep up with non-traditional media, the non-traditional media is constantly talking about the decrease in quality of traditional media and how maybe a lot of those quality people have moved over or are doing different things. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of scenarios to that statement there alone. A lot of these newspapers that you would physically woke up and were excited to get the ads and the coupons and the puzzles and the comics on Sunday morning, I think they'll stay around, but the number of them have dwindled drastically. Everything's online.
Right.
Because with their deadlines, their deadlines are for today for a paper that comes out tomorrow. At that point, you're 12 to 24 hours old. It's old news at that point.
Right.
You know what I
if
mean?
You're publishing something.
Yeah, if you're publishing, it's old news already.
Time, which is a month old.
Yes.
And everybody's like, what? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that has also played into the media that I'm into. We have to be more creative on the stories that we're turning every day. And I say that in the sense that we're going to be at all the press conferences that are vital to the community's needs and for the alert and protect and empower and all of that. But we have to find a way to do something and tell a story that's relatable to people who live here and isn't outdated by 10 o'clock, even if we shot the interview at 9 in the morning. So, I've challenged my reporters, and it helps that a lot of them who come to Albany are not from here, and they are fresh out of school. So they're really just getting their feet in the door and getting their toes wet and trying to learn this business. And it's a very stressful business. But, luckily, South Georgia has a lot of every type of news that people can learn about here. Everything from, we did a Facebook Live about a dog that was stuck on a house in downtown Albany, and that would not have led my newscast, and we didn't even think about that during the day. But it became a story that people cared about because they were worried about the welfare of that dog, and they wanted to know what happened, Right. So...
and there's pooch groups on Facebook.
They've
you lose your
shared
dog.
it. Yes.
Your dog can be found immediately.
Right. I've met people in town because I found their dog.
At least 2 or 3 times found a dog, put it on Facebook, and within 10 minutes, they're somebody in Asheville called somebody who was vacationing, and it would happen to be their, or text or whatever.
Right.
And so, that's incredible.
Well, and that's kind of how it's changed a little bit is, newspapers were very personal. You spent time with these people telling them your story. And now with news as crazy and as quickly as it happens, are we losing that personal connection or that emotional connection to these types of stories? With the deadlines much quicker now because everybody got the information 5 minutes ago, how do you stay relevant? what are you doing and providing that makes the story relevant when it's published 12 hours ago, or when the newscast is 6 hours from now, or whatever. Right. So I don't know if it's changing more of I need the information now and the credibility of the sources. As long as you get information, I don't think people care anymore. Where back in the day that's
a good point. Yeah.
We were, taking the time to get the facts.
Well, that's a really good point. So now, because of the pressure to get news out, is it fake news because because they're trying so hard to get it out faster than everybody else? It's not so much that it's fake, it's just they didn't take the time to go check. Whereas if it was going to be in a paper that was 2 days from now, or they had weeks to work on a story, then, and there still are some pieces that take weeks to work on, but that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, we have that comes down to an ethical thing when we're talking about fake news, because the integrity of a newsroom, I don't care what your call letters are, you should be finding the news and providing it accurate information quickly. Sure. And credible information.
Yeah,
too.
I didn't mean fake. I mean, that's just one of those That's just one of those like catchphrases that's gotten out.
Like
I guess President
clickbait.
Trump.
Oh yeah, clickbait, and that's a great example too. And I will use weather because that's my passion, and it really just drives my blood pressure when I see clickbait. We'll take, for example, tropical season. There are people who have some inkling of what a weather model looks like, and if there's some kind of blob near South Georgia 10 days from now, that thing is up on social media in a hot minute, and it's been shared 13,000 times. That thing may not even happen.
Everyone's triggered.
Everyone is worried and panicked. And Kerri, there's a tropical storm. Why didn't you tell me? So
I can't believe it.
I can't believe you. Is it coming right down Lido? I mean, right now it's a week and a half away. I have no idea. But investigative pieces, these deep dives every month, every couple of weeks, every day, every newscast. Yeah. So it's good and bad. We need to learn, and we need to teach younger reporters that are just coming into the business to ask those harder questions now, instead of waiting for a sit down to do just these hard questions. So at press conferences, are we asking the hard questions? The helpful tool with social media and Facebook Live is people watching that aren't there have questions, and we can ask those questions in press conferences now because they're asking them and we can see them pop up on our screen. So
what's the toughest question you've ever had?
I don't know.
Awkward.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
there are always maybe that was just it.
Yeah, that may actually have just been it. I don't know that I've had any really tough or awkward.
You just took her.
Yeah, I don't know if I've had any really tough or awkward questions that I've had to ask where they were memorable. I mean, I think it depends on the situation. I've been in tough moments. I covered a story of a shooting that happened over the weekend in Camilla, and it's hard. We have to go out to these places and see if people will talk to us. A lot of times they don't want to. A lot of times you run into people that are really closely related, or they know these people really well, connected. Yeah. And the one that I remember is I was out there, and it was a cul-de-sac neighborhood, and I spoke to the person's best friend who was just shot and killed 6 hours earlier, and he was kind of there just going through it again in his head. He was there when he got shot. He saw it happen. He saw his best friend die, and what I planned on doing when I got there was not what ended up happening. I mean, I sat in a hug where the guy cried on my shoulder, and then the person who died, his another family member's an aunt, I think. We all just hugged each other and cried for a good 30 minutes, and I don't even know the person, and I was sobbing too, So some of those things that you don't prepare for that in college until you get on scene. So, and then I've been through tough stuff, I was on TV when the tornado came through Albany, and I remember looking at my phone and seeing tornado emergency. And anybody that really knows me, I'm very, very involved in this community, and I don't sleep, so I find a way to be productive in the community when I'm not sleeping, So it was heartbreaking to know, my gut was, probably in my toes, because I was like, I don't know who this is affecting. These are people that I know. These are people that, that I care for. These are people that, at the same time, my family's right down the street at the house, the ceiling tiles lifted at the station during all of it when the tornado was passing by. So, and then afterwards, I was with the Salvation Army canteen handing out supplies and bringing hope to the community, or trying to, and just to see the destruction and see what happened while I was trying to get the message out. It's heartbreaking. It's life-changing. Yeah. I still I smell pine in my sleep, I think, after that. And, people say that, but it's true. I don't know that I could have a real Christmas tree again, because I don't want to smell it. It brings back a bad memory. I've had nightmares about it, so
because of all the chainsaws.
Well, the chainsaw oil. Yeah, exactly.
Cutting up one pine tree after another pine tree after another.
But more than that, it's no secret that Albany once was known as the fourth poorest city in the nation. Yeah. These houses. We actually still make that list, I think. But I don't think we're fourth anymore. But I
think
we're
we
on
moved
the
down
list.
to ninth.
Okay, well, progress.
Yeah.
Progress. But
when you're at the bottom, you can always,
you can always go up.
A long way up.
But in saying that, these are houses that people work so hard for, and it means so much more because they had nothing, and now they really have nothing. And that, I think that's what pulled on my heartstrings, and that's why it kind of changed. But it changed me as a person, and it changed me as it changed us as a community, to be able to overcome this. And it's different but similar to what folks endured 94 with the floods, and 98 and 2002 and 2015 December flooding. When you go to school and when you get into this business, you don't prepare for those things. And until you live them, and I don't wish that upon anybody, but until you live them, you don't really know what you're going to do and what you're going to face when you leave work the next day. So it's different, and I think that I love that there's more opportunities for people to stay connected. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of social media and of new media.
Do you think it's going to become more, and I guess it already has, interactive? I mean, the TV itself hasn't become interactive, but certainly the news has, because people ask you questions all the time on Facebook. And you're constantly answering.
Listen, people will tell me if I've gained weight. People will ask me if I'm pregnant. People
Come on,
don't.
Guys, stop asking about the weight.
Listen, people don't care when they're behind a keyboard, because there's no consequence. These aren't the conversations that we're having face to face, because
trolls.
So there's always pros and cons to everything. With it being so accessible, it works out in your favor, and it doesn't. It's a way to communicate, but at the same time, there's no filter.
Like Squawk Box on steroids.
Yeah, except it's right here.
Well, I think if you're sitting there talking to somebody, you're not going to tell them they're a sorry son of a bitch right in their face, generally.
Right.
But
depending on how many of these beers you've had.
Touche.
This part of the podcast is actually brought to you by Rye Charles. But no, I mean, it's a real thing, because it's so, there's an inhuman part to this whole new media thing. I mean, and you spoke about and what you're talking about is the humanity of getting involved in someone's life and really telling their story and affecting, because I mean, the podcast that you talked about put 2 people in jail. Yeah. Yeah. So it changed the family of the killed lady, because it gave them justice. It changed the family of the killers. I mean, because they went to prison.
Right.
I mean, and it changed the whole community, because it kept it going.
Right.
And the same thing happens. I mean, when you're dealing with people, that particular part, and it should affect you.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's the thing about being, like, you need that kind of feedback to keep you honest.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing about the whole social media, or the whole constantly being connected, or I'm not really facing another person. I'm just looking at my keyboard, and I can be as ugly to it as I want.
Yeah.
I've had a bad day.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
we have to come across that. And you asked about some of the toughest or the strangest things. I mean, I remember doing the weather and an email coming in and asking about whether or not I would send them my shoes or my socks or a photo of me, wearing shoes. So you could probably
you can purchase those online.
Yeah, you could actually see that email on Instagram. But because of course I had to share that one.
Of course,
but,
yeah, definitely.
It opens the door for lots of different things. I mentioned about social media changing the way law enforcement kind of interacts. Everything's right there, but there's so much hate in the country and the communities not just Albany. I'm speaking on a larger
No,
scale.
no, yeah.
It's tough for them to do their job, to put on that badge and go out the door every day. I mean,
Right.
compared to some of the things that they have to see and do, my job is a walk in the park, and
No
every
doubt.
day I told you that, there's somebody that's like, oh, you get paid to be wrong. Well, no, I don't.
No.
No, not exactly how that science works, but good hypothesis.
Thank you. We'll try again.
Ding.
Ding.
Next.
Yeah, that's right.
But at the same time, it works because sometimes they don't want to be face-to-face to give you information. So now it's a way to give you information to look into, whether it be
Yeah.
law enforcement, whether it be the media.
It's worth all of that.
Yeah. Sometimes. I mean, so, I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to continue to change. What we're used to right now is going to be different. They talk about Big Brother watching and things of that nature. I'm
Right.
sure that technology exists. We have Alexa now. She
gathering
will
Oh no.
she
Oh, no
will
doubt.
answer
Right.
every question you have and more, and record it and keep it for later and move on. But,
Right.
you can post on Facebook and it has your longitude and latitude of where you've posted that from. So
Oh, no doubt.
whether
No.
you're on vacation posting about that you're out of town, or you're at a restaurant having dinner, or you're just, posting to post, somebody can find out right where you are. And
Or like what is it? Not so. I do Facebook, but my kids say that's really old. Like I don't even know if they have Facebook pages. Instagram apparently is a little bit better, but Snapchat, like
that's the place to
how
go.
that's how they communicate. Like
Well,
they don't
yeah.
like they don't text, they don't Facebook, they do some Instagram, but the post has to be really good to post the Instagram.
Yeah.
So. But everything Snapchat, and you can look and see where everybody is, which is really strange to
Yeah.
me. That's
Yeah, they got the map feature on that too.
Yeah.
Snapchat's one of those apps
do y'all
where
do that with the news station, or is that a
no.
thing?
I mean,
No?
I'm not friends with people on Snapchat from the community as far as like,
Yeah.
I just met you, let's be Snap
well,
buddies.
I don't know. I mean, you go
be
through it.
careful
There's like
I feel like Snapchat is more personal based on your friendships and your relationships that you have, whereas, Twitter or Facebook is more public, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense. I feel like you're absolutely right. A lot of businesses and news organizations, they're the ones that are using Facebook, or people with families that live outside of Albany, outside of Georgia, outside of the country. It's
that's
an
a good
easy
point.
tool to
Keep
keep in
up.
touch. But as far as like up and coming, most people now are on Snapchat and Instagram probably. But like you said, Instagram posts have to be on point. You can't just throw it up there because you're at the barbershop. You know?
Take us back, or I'm going to take us back to back to the media part. So Pretoria Fields has actually Pretoria Fields is attempting to acquire a radio station. Hopefully I will not get in trouble for actually mentioning that by the FCC, because apparently, for those who don't know, if you want to buy a radio station, you actually have to ask the FCC for the permission to acquire the signal.
Yep.
And you can't be quite a few things that you can't be. And I won't go through those.
There's a
'Cause
lot of rules.
I probably don't even know it. But so the whole idea, and I want to get into this, is this idea of new media, and how do we connect with people nowadays? Because I don't watch TV. I mean, really, we watch Netflix, which is really not real TV, because it's basically downloaded over the internet. I can watch it on my phone, I watch it on my computer, I can find it wherever. Pull up your account on the.
I get it.
On the,
I don't watch TV either, so
Yeah,
I get it.
exactly.
Yeah, and I work at a news station, and I don't watch TV. Now I'm up to date on what is going on because I'm living it every day and helping get the news team out, moving and covering stories. So I have that advantage. But for people who don't watch TV, it's tough. Netflix is a big thing. People do it. I mean, they have hashtags about, Netflix and chill and all that kind of stuff. But you have like different things like Chromecast and Hulu, and they're taking our TV shows and putting them on there. Roku. People have apps on Roku. We have a channel on YouTube. So it's all part of the change.
Here's a weird thing. So my kids, the older two, they both like records. Like, so throwback to records.
Right.
And they both listen to the radio, which is another reason why we started talking about doing a radio station. So, maybe, there's a nostalgia for older things. And
It's coming back.
Yeah,
it's
that's
coming
exactly
back,
right.
Like fanny packs are
like
supposedly
hairspray.
coming back too.
Yeah.
Hairspray.
Going
Yeah,
back to hairspray.
We're coming back.
Pull it back full circle.
No, you're right. I too have records, and that's a new thing. I got a record player for Christmas last year, because it's just fun. You're in control of that music, and you get to dictate what happens. The radio, it's just always been there. It's convenient.
Yeah.
If you can't figure out what you want on your iTunes that day, or you don't have a favorite playlist that you want to listen to, we're gonna station hop through the commercials.
And people don't. And what I remember is having a DJ that I really liked, and when he was on, it was there was something about how he played songs that I really, that I was drawn to, and I think that's a thing.
But they've changed too. The way that the radio is done is not like it was before too. There are a lot of people that have syndicated radio talk show hosts. Bobby Bones isn't in Albany, Georgia, but you can hear him every morning, or at least Monday through Friday. So syndication is a big word that's being used in media these days because it's easier to have one person pay one person or a handful of people to give information
to disperse
to multiple
a whole
places
lot of information
instead of having separate stations.
And I guess that was our idea, was if you look around all of the radio stations, most except for one and possibly the one we're buying, were owned by other, but were owned by conglomerates.
Right.
And those conglomerates were syndicating their shows from everywhere else. They had 8 to 10 stations in one building here in Albany. Although the signals are coming from Sylvester and Cordele and Americus and Blakely, all over Southwest Georgia, and so there was no local channel. Whereas when I was a kid, it seemed like
everybody was
local.
That's exactly right.
And so part of the idea behind Pretoria Media is to try to recreate that local feel and refocus our media dollars in both audio, as like podcast is one example of that, and video production through these things, for which we can get our video out through multiple different sources, both Facebook it's just, and it's like I think it plays into what we were just discussing. We can do those things. Maybe we're not doing them as well, and I don't have, at least right now, we don't have people who went to school and that's, what their life's work wanted to be. But who knows, in the next few years we may.
Well, and maybe, but again, I think the way of that's done is changing. So you're going to have to create a catalyst or bring back an old trade. There's no more Casey Kasems anymore. There's no more Ryan Seacrest in every single location around the states and countries. So even the top 40, which they've been doing for years and years and years, has shifted a little bit as well. So I think the important thing to do is, for any type of media that you're doing, is the relevancy and accuracy. I mean, what are we talking about? What are we showing? Why should people watch? And if it's topics that they're interested in, you've sold them. But you've got to find some way to see what people want.
Sure. Hey, we're gonna take 2 seconds. I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Okay.
And they'll actually cut this part out. And then okay, so we're back. And yes, I went and took a pee break. Our next topic, or last topic. Next topic. I wanted to talk about, one of the things we're doing, or we're trying to do with new media, is, this podcast is one of the things. And so trying to generate a viewership, trying to get better at podcasting, trying to create, and the way in our other businesses that we've done this is through relationships. And through building relationships with
everybody and
anybody. And so when we were at the Flint River, what was that called?
The Knobby Knees
Music Festival. That's exactly right. I should know that since I'm on the board.
I would love to go to that. I have not been.
It was
great.
Good.
Music, fun.
Yeah.
We dodged a thunderstorm. I mean, totally South Georgia.
Awesome.
And you were...
I was the MC,
she was
actually.
the MC.
Yeah.
She was the morning MC. Yeah, that's right.
Yes. I'm part of the Flint River Keepers, so I've helped MC the event the past 3 years. We just changed to a new name this year, but it makes sense. It's literally part of what the tree is. It's cypress tree is what it's called. So
yeah,
the Knobby Knees.
I'll be going next time.
And so while we were there, we sat down and listened to some good music and talked a little bit about how to increase viewership and increase production. And one of the things that I want to do, because it's a passion, is really look at organic agriculture in South Georgia and sustainable farming practices and natural resource management, which also goes on with what's going on with what goes on with the Flint River Keepers, and really highlight those folks that are doing a good job at those things, because it's extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an organic farm. We got organic certification about 4 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. And
Time flies when you're having fun.
And there's a reason that people use chemicals.
Yep.
It increases production capacity. It makes
Produces more product.
It makes product. You get viable stuff. I mean, you don't have as much labor, so your labor cost is less. So lots of reasons why people switched to chemicals as opposed to hand labor for farming. From the medical standpoint, though, I think it's imperative that we figure out a way to at least reduce the amount of chemicals and toxins and poisons that we're using to produce our food, because I think it is at least contributed in part to the epidemic of chronic disease that we're seeing across the United States. Now, without, the caveat to that is without those, without all of the food production, we're one of the richest nations. With that food production, we're one of the richest nations in the world, and we're able to feed our population and many other populations.
Mm-hmm.
And so so maybe, and this would be an interesting thing. How does that look? How do we go about doing that?
Oh, so
Can we do that?
So I specialize in weather. But that too plays a factor in this. Even with the watermelon crops we just saw here, with the amount of rain that we saw toward the tail end of the season, was detrimental in some regards. We had major Hurricane Michael. We can't talk about that one enough. Took out most of the timber industry in South Georgia. Now, that's not necessarily organic farming or finding resources and natural resources to be able to do that, but I think it all kind of ties in hand. We need to make sure that our infrastructure systems are secure so that our water table isn't compromised, or the way that we're irrigating isn't compromised. I'm not an expert at farming. I have some aloe and some lemongrass growing in my house right now,
Sure.
And some lavender, but you've got to be able to protect these from bugs, from insects, from things in the air, to help them produce and stay viable and stay productive and produce a yield. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what y'all are looking to do as a farmer's, produce a yield. And so it kind of is married, in the sense that weather is very dependent on what kind of crop you have, depending on is it too dry, is it too wet, are you saving money by not having to irrigate because we've seen just enough or just the right amount of rain. What happens, or are you prepared for what can you do to protect your crop if something like a tornado or a hurricane
Sure.
or something comes through?
Yeah, most things are insured nowadays. But the
still,
bad thing is
they don't
the
get enough,
insurance
yeah.
really only covers about 50% of what the loss was. So
and
it's
when do you
not-
get that insurance money to help with,
Right.
saving your crop or replanting? So,
Sure.
there's a lot of decisions that are made. God bless y'all for being able to read the climate and know kind of what you need and stuff. But
I guess one of the things, one of the things that I wanted to produce it, or to aspects to look at, was like look at what Sweetgrass Dairy's doing down in Thomasville,
Mhm.
and look at what White Oak Pastures,
Mhm.
like grass-fed beef and grass-fed cattle,
Right.
non-GMO products, and how, what are the health benefits to those, and really, so what I thought was sort of highlight some of the producers in the area, and then also talk about the medical benefits that are associated with that, because I think that makes it real for people. So why should I
Exactly.
do that? And then how? So number one, it's more expensive. It may or may not taste better, and then and then it's hard to get. That's the other thing. I mean,
But even saying all of that, I think if you are able to educate the community and
that's
bring
exactly it.
awareness to the
Absolutely,
community,
yeah,
that was kind of my next point in all of this is, weather plays a big factor in all of the steps you have to take as a farmer or a farm owner or a landowner. It all comes down to, perception of the community. Why do I need this? How does this help me become healthier or stay healthy or get healthier?
That sounds like an investigation.
Yeah, well, we talked about talking about this at Not Beneath already, but I think that's kind of the big thing, and I think that's how we make it successful is because people may not understand.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so, and what I'd really like to do is take it from those things and then look at some of the restaurants in the area that are actually doing the whole farm to table, and then highlight on who they are, what they have to do that. You brought up a really good point. Like, we're in a food desert. And so what is a food desert? So there's plenty of food around, right? So I mean, we got McDonald's. McDonald's is going to sue me, I'm sure. but McDonald's is not healthy. I mean, from the and that's my medical opinion.
Right.
Eating McDonald's for every meal is not healthy. Now, McDonald's is cheap. There's a lot of calories in McDonald's, but there's not much nutrition.
Yeah, I was going to say the fillers, right?
Yeah. And so the problem is most people eat a lot. They get a lot of calories, but they don't get the nutrition that they need to be healthy.
Well, devil's advocate, let's talk about the people who live here. They're working at least one job to pay the bills. They have kids that they've got to feed. They go to places like that, fast food chains, and because it's quick and it's easy.
Oh, yeah.
So part of the education and awareness is not only why is this beneficial to you, but maybe it's also tying in some kind of how can we create meals that are quick and easy for you for your day to day too. So to that point, most of the subsidies for food, people do exactly that. They go and get as much as they can for what they have. Well, if we subsidized, and I'm not saying only, but if we subsidized mostly what was healthy, which means exactly what your grandma told you were supposed to eat. Eat meat, vegetables, fruit, greens. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean, it's just, get the grain, I'm not saying never eat grains, never eat dairy, or never have sugar. It's just, it doesn't need to be the staple of every meal. Right.
And, there's not
You've just upset every toddler in South Georgia.
4 to 5 times a day, patients say, "But that's all I eat," and that's the problem. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's the problem, and so the solution is get back to a more agrarian diet in which we're getting a lot of green leafy vegetables and then 3/4, and there's a lot of vegetarians who would say with it, but I think protein-based nutrients has a lot of benefit, and so 3/4 of your plate should be green, and 1/4 green or red, blue, orange, and then 1/4 should be meat. And so, but highlighting those things and the people that are providing, the people that are already doing that, and then the education that goes along with it, because as people get a little more affluence, not influence, as they get a little more affluence, then they start worrying about they start caring about those things. And so how do we do that? Well, I think the media outlets are certainly a very good way.
Yeah.
And that's actually Pretoria Field's collective mission, is to promote these ideals.
Yeah, and that's an easy investigative piece, kind of like that Nikki was alluding to is that's something that we can do to help with that too. But it also starts even for people who don't watch the news, the kids in the school system.
Oh, yeah.
So many over the last 3 years, there have been so many more farm to table stories where these schools have community gardens that they grow stuff to. There's a school right here in Doherty County, Lake Park Elementary. Nope. International Studies Elementary, they will save food that's not been eaten and provide it for school for kids who don't have food on the weekend or something.
Right.
So Farmer Fredo, y'all have
Shout
had
out
him
to
on
Farmer
here.
Fredo before you go.
Yeah, Fox fans, we do have a big lineup this fall coming. WWE returns for the wrestling fans. It goes good with beer, that and Thursday Night Football for sure. So they partner well. And then the Masked Singer is one of our big ones that's coming back. I know a lot of people were very curious about who was under the mask all season long. So we'll be very active on new media, social media with all of that as well. So something for everybody this upcoming fall.
Very good. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thanks
I appreciate
for having
it.
me. It's been fun.
Yep.
It has been fun.
Awesome.
I'm always here for y'all.
And and then for everybody to know, she actually gets all this beer that's left. So and she only drank one. So.
Right.
All right. Thank you.